looking back to it, it was very risky, but I didn't see it as a risk at the time. I saw it as an opportunity. And I just took 100% everything into that thing.
Welcome to the Beneath the Surface podcast. In today's episode, it's all about my boyfriend Julius. He will be my guest for the day. Last week we did an episode only about me basically, and now I'm interviewing him. And if you like this video, please leave a like and also share your opinion in the comment section. And if you enjoy listening to the podcast and want to see future updates, we would love if you would subscribe to the channel.
Okay, let's go.
I basically know all the answers to the questions already, but let's just pretend I don't.
Yeah, it's a confusing set. Same as last week, I was so confused interviewing my own girlfriend, but this is how it is. This is how you get to know better who we are, so That's it.
And to find out a bit more about the roots of everything, we would like to get to know you a bit better in your past and how you grew up, where you grew up, and how it was your life before everything around photography started.
So I come from a pretty big family, which is super different to you. Michelle is the only child and I have 5 siblings.
Which is a pretty big contrast.
Very big contrast. I have 2 little brothers, 2 little sisters, and then 1 big brother. And I think it was incredible to grow up with in like such a loving family, and especially with my big brother, we always came along. Maybe not so much when we were younger, but then nowadays we come along really well, and it's been amazing to have a supportive brother all along in this in this journey and in life in general. And that's pretty much the family situation. And then what comes to my life in general, it was pretty boring. I lived in a really small town. Yeah, really small town, about 3,000 people. And I had a very good group of friends, very close group of friends. And all we did was game. And then we hanged around the town. And we just biked around the town when we didn't have moped licenses yet. And then in general, it was just quite boring, like countryside life. And I always had like really weird hobbies. And we also we've noticed that we had some similar hobbies at the time when we were smaller.
Tell me about them.
Yeah, so I used to do this. I don't know why. I remember picking up unicycling when I tried it out at my cousin's house, and then that sort of became a thing randomly. Like everyone else was doing ice hockey and like floorball and like all these like sort of bigger sports, and I was always the weird kid who did like weird hobbies. I
also have to mention the cup stacking or however you call it.
So I used to do sports stacking. I think I held like a Finnish record for a while in that hobby, or something like that. And I used to do YouTube videos about it. So me and my brother did YouTube videos about cup stacking, and the videos are private nowadays, but at the time it was like the coolest community ever. I don't know why, but that's sort of what I used to do. Just weird hobbies and a very, very ordinary sort of background. So there's nothing crazy going on there. Nothing business related at any point from my family. It's just like super ordinary life. And that was it.
Well, that's how most of us grow up.
Yeah.
And still then at some point develop the interest in business and everything. But when you grew up completely normally, like when did the interest in photography start? Like when did you first pick up your camera or thought that could be something that you're passionate about?
So I think the interest in photography started very suddenly. So I never had like a dream job. I never knew what I wanted to do in life. So photography was just one random day, me picking up a camera and then going out, and I fell in love with photography like immediately like this. And it was a random thing that I tried out. And I was lucky that I was able to borrow my dad's camera, and my dad had gotten that camera from his dad, so my grandpa, but he never used it. So I just grabbed it one day and decided to go randomly with my scooter like a couple kilometers to take images of a sunset. and I was immediately hooked, because before that I had only been taking some images with my phone, and then I also at the time like was already slightly interested in like creating things. When I was small, I used to draw a lot, and then I also loved woodworking in school. So I always liked to do things with my hands, and the images were sort of interesting. And this started in 2016, so I was 16, 17 years old at the time, and it just started very, very randomly. And one day I was like, okay, I'm gonna delete all of my selfies from Instagram. And then I decided that I want to build like a beautiful gallery. So it was, and my friends thought it was a bit weird. Everyone around me thought it was a bit weird, but it was something that I thought was sort of cool and creative. So
yeah, that's what always happens if you start like being a bit more active on Instagram. People around you that know you the way you were like always been, they think it's a bit weird.
Yeah, it's a bit strange. And at the time I had like a private account. I wasn't like really, I didn't know anything about Instagram. I just played around with my phone and took some images. And then when I finally got interested in the camera itself, then I was introduced to like aperture, ISO, like all like the manual settings and so on.
I just wanted to ask, when you started being interested in photography, you still didn't really know much. Like you first started taking images and then along the way you studied more about it.
Yeah, so it started pretty quick. I got really interested in how I can edit my images, but this was no Photoshop at all. So I was only introduced to Lightroom by YouTube tutorials. So I did a YouTube search on like how to edit images or something like that. And then I found Lightroom and I started editing images with Lightroom a little bit. Completely horrible stuff. I can put some of my images here, edit them into the video version. By the way, people who are listening to this, there is a video version available on YouTube where you can watch it. So just search for the Beneath the Surface podcast and you can watch the video version. But yeah, so I got interested in editing. In the past, I had only used some photo apps like Snapseed and played around with the settings without any clue what anything does. And then gradually I got more interested in how I can like shoot raw and how can I like get more detail out of my images. But my camera was horrible. It was one of those digital zoom cameras where you had like crazy 1000x zoom, but the sensor is like super tiny.
Yeah, I used one like that as well, I think, when I grew up. Or my parents had it and I just use it every now and then. But
I would be interested to know, like comment down below if you are watching on YouTube, like did a lot of people have sort of interest in photography in a way that they randomly picked someone's camera? Like, because I feel like a lot of people I've talked to picked up photography just randomly by testing, not in a way that they had like this idea since growing up that, hey, I want to be a photographer and blah, blah, blah. It's sort of a random thing that just happens and then you get hooked to it.
Yeah.
And this is what happened to me. And it took me like years then to actually buy a camera, and we can go more forward to then like what happens next, because I actually got quite bored with photography.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about now, because you at some point stopped taking images and sort of losing the passion for photography for a while because you became more interested in digital art. And I want to know why that happened, like why you stopped taking images and when and how you started getting interested in digital art.
Yeah, so as I told, I lived in a really small town, so there wasn't much to shoot around there. It was only fields, cows, animals. Like there's actually a lot of animals, and me and Michelle have now afterwards like found out that it's actually a perfect place to like take some images during morning of like animals. But at the time,
nice.
At the time I had no idea about it. And it's incredible. We've gone on sunrise adventures in my hometown, and it's actually pretty cool to like see wild animals and take images of them.
But probably would have also been a bit impossible with your camera at that time, because you can't really get that close to animals.
Yeah, and also with my transportation, because at the time I was 16, 17, so only thing I had was a scooter, and I had like an 80 euro scooter that my dad had bought secondhand, like from somewhere. It was completely crashed, and then my dad fixed it for me. And that was sort of the way how I moved around the town. And then I just at some point felt so bored of doing it all alone. No one else was interested in photography, so I was always taking images alone. And then I just like went with my scooter to the places in my hometown, and always the same spots over and over and over again. And then I realized after I got a bit more invested into the Instagram community that like there's so many incredible places in this earth, and I'm shooting in like in the middle of fields where there's literally like not much to shoot. So I lost my interest in photography in a sense. And then I was introduced to digital art, again, randomly. And I had used Photoshop before in like school project or something. I had like sort of gotten interested to it in like at the time, but then I didn't do it at all. And like nothing really started from that. And then randomly got really interested in digital art. And I noticed very quickly that there's not much I can do with my own photos because the quality of the camera was really bad. And I was super limited with like the objects that I could use. So then I found free stock image websites and started creating art with those. And that's how the interest in like editing itself started.
And did it like, I know that at some point you worked, or you edited for hours and hours a day. Did it start like that straight from the beginning, or?
This was also more so gradual. So first it was very much only like testing. And then along the way it got like a bit more like I had like an actual sort of idea with it that like I really want to do this. So it instead of first I got interested in photography, and then suddenly I realized that I enjoy editing at the time like way more than photography. But actually nowadays it's sort of flipped around. Like I love both equally, but maybe even I like photography a bit more than editing itself. But this is just because now I've been able to take photos everywhere, and like I've sort of been able to do what I wanted to do at the time. So this is the moment where I got interested in editing, and then I got the idea that it would be so cool to take images around the world and then create edits out of those. And this was towards the end of 2016, and I think I still had a private account at the time, so there's no like Instagram related in any type of way.
But then you eventually started posting on Instagram more and more about your digital art and everything.
Yeah, and this was inspired by meeting one of my favorite photographers at the time, probably my favorite photographer even up to this day, Konsta Punkka, who is like a very, very talented Finnish wildlife photographer. And he had put up to his Snapchat like a message at the time that, hey, like if someone lives around this area, blah, 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 like I would be down to shoot, like send me a message if you want to come to shoot with me. And I was immediately like, hey, like I live close by, and like I've just started photography, and I would enjoy that a lot.
Would you consider yourself that like you've been a fanboy back then? Like really excited?
Probably internally, yeah, a little bit. Like I was very, very excited, but then I realized that it's like, Konsta is such an amazing dude. I immediately got really good vibes from him, and I haven't really had a chance to like meet up with him afterwards, but he inspired me a lot. He had like something 600,000 followers at the time, and like a very normal, like grounded dude, and super, super talented. And he went against the masses sort of. Like he used to spend like hours and hours, and still spends hours and hours in the forest or somewhere taking images of animals, and
it's so crazy to think about it, how much time it involves to take images of
animals.
And
like the progression over the years is crazy. Like if you scroll all the way back to Konsta's like first images on Instagram, they're already like really good, and now we're talking about a progression of like 10 plus years of him doing it daily all the time, which is super inspiring. And it inspired me so much at the time that's probably why I started Instagram originally, then a bit more serious. And I started like getting all these dreams of like traveling the world and taking photos and editing then images out of those. Yeah.
And then eventually when you like posted on Instagram regularly, there was some sort of turning point, let's say in your editing career.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting, because nowadays that doesn't happen too often anymore, at least on Instagram.
No, so what Michelle talking about is me going viral with one edit that I created at the time. So I was already in high school. So in Finland, we have 9 grades. You go from 1 to 9 in one school, or some people go from 1 to 6 in one school, and then 7 to 9 in another school. And then you change schools again. So there's 12 grades in total, like in Germany, but we change schools in between. So I was in high school, and I just remember thinking that now this is what I want to do. And at the time, I thought that I'm like gonna become a math teacher, but then it started like switching a bit more. And I was editing all the time after school. And I also went to the gym at the time a lot. So I was only editing, school, gym. That's what I did. And one morning, I randomly just created an edit like I always did. I went on the stock image websites, I also like, this was a day when I was supposed to be in school, but if I remember right, I like edited really late the past evening. So then I woke up normally, started creating images, and decided that, hey, I'm hungry. I went to get pizza, came back home, created that image, posted it on Instagram, and then I went to the gym normally, and afterwards my image had gone viral. So it happened like very strangely all of a sudden, and I made a promise to myself in 2017 that this is what I want to do, and then I kept doing it, and eventually then something went viral. And this is very rare, as you said.
Yeah, it's really interesting that happened to you, and then you basically used that opportunity to then eventually make a career out of it, because not a lot of people realize real opportunities if they're basically in front of you, staring at you.
Yeah, and it happened also gradually. Like, of course, at the time when you were first starting Instagram and you're getting excited about like the opportunities or maybe getting your images shared, it happens gradually, the build up to it, and you don't really know much, but step by step you start understanding a bit more, like, hey, there's this feature page, and maybe like if I do this thing, I can build a bit more attention to my images, and like there's these tiny things that you then start considering, which also, if you take them really obsessively, can become like the death of your creativity, and like you sort of get obsessed into the Instagram sort of part of things when the main focus should be in creating. But yeah, that whole image then sort of changed everything. And before that, there was a time when I was just editing. So it took me 1.5 years to get my first feature. Then it took me like 3 months to get from 1,000 to 2,000. And then from 2,000 to 6,000, it took a few more months. And then my image went viral. And then it took a few months to get to like 30K. So it was 1.5 years to get my first feature. But of course, I couldn't even get features at the time for a long time because my account was private.
Yeah, that's true.
I officially started like the first day of 2017, and I created like a caption that this is what I want to do. And then it just was like very gradual, but I stuck to it. I was so determined that this is what I want to do that I just kept doing it constantly, and eventually then it just paid off.
It's so crazy because on Instagram, it's so easy for people to assume that you just got lucky and that the success happened overnight. But in reality, you put hours and like thousands or hundreds of hours of work into getting where you are today. Hundreds, way more than hundreds.
Yeah.
But it's just crazy because people don't really realize how much work you put into it, and then eventually you will get lucky. It's not that you get lucky by doing one thing. It's you get lucky by doing something consistently, and the hard work eventually pays off.
Exactly. And this is exactly, but we are now in the very like middle of the point here, because both of us, we've done so much work behind the scenes before we started like actually getting anywhere. And there is always so much work because in the beginning you're not confident enough to share the journey.
Yeah.
And this is my biggest regret as well, of not actually sharing since the beginning, but I was just too scared. I was way too scared to share my face on Instagram. I was way too scared to like think about like how could I turn something like that into my job. Like those weren't really thoughts in my head. I was just editing because that was fun for me. And then everything else sort of happened gradually after that. But I regret of not like documenting the beginning, because that's what took like the most effort mentally and also just physically, because I was doing so much all the time. I was even editing in school. I was even like doing things in school every moment I got.
Well, you just didn't realize it back then that this can lead into something big.
It started with just pure intentions of wanting to like share something, and then gradually it of course then turned into something else, and then I started getting more interested in how can I grow a brand out of it.
Yeah, and that's what we're gonna talk about now, because when your shot went viral, I think shortly after, I hope I'm not wrong, like first business opportunities opened up to you.
Yeah, so
tell about that.
So this is then after the image went viral, as you said, and it took a few months to get to like 30-something thousand followers, and at the time I suddenly got an email. Before that, I had never gotten any emails. Like no one was interested in what I was doing. I was just slowly growing on Instagram and picking up the momentum, so to say. And then one day I got an email from the founder of MySpace, Tom Anderson. And the email went something like this: that, hey, I'm Tom from MySpace, maybe before your time. I would love to collaborate with you. I saw your recent edit and I thought it was really cool. Something like this. So he just simply wanted to collaborate with me, and he got really interested in who I am as well. So then we changed messages for a while, and he sent me some of his images. I created the edit, and then he posted it on his Instagram account. And he had at the time, probably still has, like a Instagram bio where it says like retired, now focusing on helping other people as much as possible, something like this. And Tom was really helpful. He shared the image. I got a lot of I think 4,000 followers from one of his posts, like immediately. And that's very rare nowadays. No matter who mentions you, it's very hard to get those type of numbers if we are talking purely about numbers. But he praised me in the caption and like sort of led me to the direction of possibilities business-wise, because before that I had not like imagined or had any type of idea of building some sort of a business out of it. I had no clue about business. And then he said that he has this one friend who has like very successful course business, and he gave me my info to him. And then he's this guy is called Serge Romelli, a very talented on the business and marketing side of photography products. And I got contacted by them, and I created my first course then because of Tom basically like telling me that, hey, there is an actual opportunity. So he sort of was the reason why I got then so interested in moving more to the business side as well, because he made me realize that there is an actual market for something that I'm doing as well.
And you were really early with courses related to photography and editing.
Definitely not the first, but probably on the Instagram niche.
Yeah.
I was sort of early. And maybe not even on the Instagram niche, but in my niche. What I'm trying to say is that like the digital art community was quite small at the time. So maybe in that community, I was one of the first then who was actually like pushing the courses a bit more. So I created my first course, basically shaking behind a microphone, not having any clue how to create a course.
And your location of the course was really interesting too.
Oh yeah, so that this first course was filmed in our parents' storage house, because I come from a big family. There was always noise inside the house. So I couldn't really.
Wasn't it the sauna? Or am I mixing something up?
So this first course was filmed in the storage house.
Okay.
Or storage building. I don't know what the shed, something like that. But basically, we have this like small outside building in our parents' home, and I sat on top of a cardboard box, taped a microphone into a spray paint can as a microphone stand, and then I created my first course there.
Started from the bottom, now we're here.
Yeah, like I started with no gear at all. I had nothing. I never even had a summer job, really. Yeah, it was really hard to get jobs in a small town, and before that I didn't have like any money. It was super hard to make money. So the first money I then made was after I released that course, and I sold it as an affiliate through Surge. So I just created the course, provided the material to his team, and then they put it on their website, marketed it somehow with their systems, and then a month later, like 2,000 suddenly popped up on my bank account. And then that's when I realized that
back then that was a ton probably for you.
I had never made almost any money in my life. And then like of course it took like a long time. Like we're now talking about almost 2 years of actively like doing something, not really with the purpose of doing business with it, but there was a lot of work involved already beforehand then, up to the point where I was able to make my first money. So that money just sort of randomly appeared. I was marketing the course to my Instagram audience myself. So I was driving traffic from my audience to the website, and I always got a cut then from that. And then
how many followers did you have back then?
Less than 50,000, probably 30,000, something like that. A bit less even. It was right after I went viral, so I did it very quickly. There was a follow-up. So when people go viral, it can go two different ways. one, they use that opportunity to get somewhere bigger, to keep the momentum going, or then they don't realize what to do and then nothing happens out of going viral. But there were so many like sort of lucky moments in that moment in my life that helped me then to push through that point where I was able to like get some use out of that momentum.
Good that you did the right thing and that you realized that opportunity you had.
Yeah, and I'm glad that I actually pushed through and went out of my comfort zone and created like that course, because it was really something that I didn't know that I could ever do. And I'm glad that I did it. And it sounds like this the first course because I am very, very monotone in it. And like it's just when you create something for the first time, it's quite hard.
It will probably also be tough on me when I start creating my first course in the future.
100%. But you've gotten already really good in front of the camera.
I mean, especially now doing the podcast, it's probably a good practice. I'm not really talking into the camera, but I know it's there. That's already enough.
Yeah.
So at this point, you were already earning money, or you at least made a couple of thousand just from doing that course. And did something change in school for you? Like, did you pay way more attention to the editing part? There's a really funny and interesting story, in my opinion.
Yeah, so of course, at the time when you are like 17 or like about to turn 18 and you suddenly make like a couple thousand doing something you love, your whole mindset like shifts. You're like, okay, this is what I want to do. There's opportunity on this, because making 2,000 passively, okay, sort of semi-passively, because there was a lot of work involved in order to be able to get to the point where I was able to make that money. But like in school, everything went downhill. And this is because I was solely interested so much more in editing and not that much anymore in school. I used to be really good in school, like very, very good student always. And for example, math, that I was really interested in it. I had like, well, the United States is on the like A level, and they have B's and C's and so on. In Finland, we have from 4 to 10, the grades. So I used to have like a lot of 10s on math.
Which is the best?
Which is the best, yeah. And then I started going down like 9, 8, 7, and eventually I didn't pass any of my tests. And at the time, some of the teachers like realized that I have clearly figured out something that I want to do in life already.
But did you have like actual conversations with them about it, that you sort of have a side business?
Yeah, they were aware of it 100%.
Okay.
Like there were some like chat about me, like telling that I have this and that, like could I please like work on this thing because I actually need to get it done and this is more important to me, blah blah blah. And then some teachers agreed on me just being on my laptop on the classes. But
it's so hard for me to believe. I think something like that could never happen in Germany. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess in Finland, we are like sort of more familiar with the teachers. We don't like say miss. Like we don't call teachers by Mr. or Miss. Like teachers are sort of our friends in school, so to say.
Yeah.
And I think it's very different, especially in the United States.
So you call them the first names?
Yeah, we call them with first names, and that can also lead to a lot of authority problems. And a lot of respect issues and so on. But some of the teachers let me be on my laptop. I was just working on my own stuff, and we're now talking about the last year of school. So just briefly before I started then eventually traveling. But yeah, I lost my interest in school. I started skipping a lot of school, which I don't recommend you to do, but I already had something on the side that I was doing semi-successfully that I was able to afford to like skip school a little bit.
I think at that time you didn't realize that it was stupid because you were just so excited about that new thing.
Exactly.
That you put the whole focus on it.
Looking back to it, it was very risky, but I didn't see it as a risk at the time. I saw it as an opportunity. And I just took 100% everything into that thing. And
I mean, maybe if you would have done it differently, you wouldn't be where you are now.
Definitely. And I wouldn't have done even half of the things I've done. Yeah.
So in the beginning of the episode, you talked a lot about your dreams of traveling the world. And eventually you made those dreams come true. But it also had some negative parts, because then eventually you also lost the interest in traveling again. And I want to hear the whole story, how that happened, how you liked the trips and everything. Just
Yeah, so I'm definitely not going to go in detail. This would be like a 7-hour long podcast if I would actually start explaining every single travel story. But just to put it quickly and explain like the main parts of how my traveling then started. I was in high school, last year of school, and we had our finals. So it was just the moment before summer holiday, then before we graduated. And I got a message from my friend at the time, like I was just an Instagram buddy, sort of. We had never met each other, but we talked a lot on DMs. My good friend Kai on Instagram, just Kai nowadays, and he invited me on this adventure to Indonesia, and it was very casual. It was like, hey, I'm doing this trip. And go to Indonesia for a few months to explore and like create content and so on. I had never been anywhere before. So this is literally, I had only been in like Norway and Finland, and maybe I had then gone to like Gran Canaria when I was like basic travel location for Europeans. But yeah, like I had really not been anywhere, and I just took the leap. I was just like, okay, I'm graduating from school. I want to travel. I have no idea how to travel. I'm scared of flights. I'm scared of airports. I'm scared of everything related to going out of my hometown, because at the time I had not really been anywhere. I used public transportation for the first time when I was like 13, 14, something like that. So I just took the leap. I decided I'm going to go all in. I booked a ticket. I told Kai that I'm going to join. And then all of a sudden I was at the airport on my way to Indonesia. And all I was scared about was, how can I survive the transfer flight? That was my biggest scare, because
not
I was
really
so
that dangerous.
I was so afraid. I don't know why. Airport scared me out back then. Nowadays it's like so chill, but at the time it was so scary.
Yeah, it is, like if you're not used to it. It was the same for me, and I think in this sense our stories are sort of similar. I went to New Zealand, although I didn't really know anything related to traveling before. And so did you. And
that is sort of the best way to do it. Like just, although it's super scary, we both agree on that those are my Indonesia trip and your New Zealand trip have been the times when we have both felt the most free in our lives.
And also, like, these have been life-changing trips, I would say.
100%. Because you get to see a different culture for the first time, and you truly feel freedom. Because you're away from your parents, you're away from your home country, you're away from your friends, and you just feel like it's a completely new world that you are sort of just completely invested in. And you meet new people, you meet the locals, and you're like completely confused of like how everything works outside of your own home country. And then it's only thing I can explain about it, and like sort of the feeling I got is like just this ultimate freedom, as I said.
Everybody I know who did like a trip like that sort of got addicted to traveling after that, just because the way you feel while traveling so freely is so intense and so unique.
Yeah.
And a lot of people like don't really know this feeling because they've never done a trip like that. They only do vacations maybe once or twice a year. And it's just staying in the hotel, not doing much. But I think the moment when a person decides to actually go full in and get the full experience, everything changes.
Yeah. And I really loved traveling in the beginning, but it was very exhausting because the idea of the trip was to grow as a person, but also grow career-wise. So the idea with my trip to Indonesia, and like I met incredible friends who have stayed my friends up to this day, but the idea of the trip wasn't only to travel, it was to gather as much content as we could. And that's where it starts to go wrong, because if you wake up every morning at 3 a.m. for months in a row to catch a sunset, catch every single sunrise you can, it starts to like take a toll on you, and eventually you just way too tired and exhausted to do anything. I lost 14 kilos of weight in Bali.
Which is insane.
In 1.5 months. I came home and my mom asked me what has happened to you, because my cheeks were like completely like like that. And yeah, I just lost a lot of weight. I lost all my gym gains that I had worked for years. I went to the gym really actively, like for 3-4 years straight. And then when I went to Bali, everything was gone after few months. We forgot to eat. We were really exhausted.
Forgot to eat.
Yeah, this is what happened.
Yeah,
Because
it was sort of a wrong mentality. I can totally understand it as a photographer myself, but it's you shouldn't travel like just thinking about the content because it
No.
will get really exhausting, and you might lose your interest and passion about it.
And during that trip, I got my first taste also into like a bit of collaboration. Some of my friends had organized some collaborations there, and at the time, I immediately realized that collaboration is not the way how I want to travel in the future, because I immediately felt the stress from them. And you have a bit of a different approach to this, and I also have maybe a slightly different approach to it nowadays because of you.
Yeah, probably I made him realize the good parts about it. I don't do collaborations to get just everything while traveling for free. It's just, I don't know. I love shooting. I love staying in unique places. And if we're going to take images of that place either way, why don't we just help each other out?
Yeah,
it's a win-win situation for both.
For the company and for us, 100%. And I love to do that with, especially when I get to meet the people behind these companies and when I get to like talk to them and actually like provide high quality content.
Yeah, that's our number one goal basically, because a lot of people just, we talked with the owners of some hotels, and they say like some people, they have to run after them to get the content or to get what they promised them, but our values are completely different. Like we just really want to deliver as much as possible, and sometimes we can go a bit overboard with it. Like we're really perfectionists.
Yeah.
But I hope that's appreciated from all the companies.
At least so far it's been. And I think, so my thought process very much with the whole business side has always been passive income over collaborations.
Of
and
course.
It's purely because it gives me the freedom. Like let's do a quick example of hiking in Lofoten. I much rather hike in Lofoten, like let's say a 12-hour hike, to get to the top of the mountain and truly take it all in and be excited to take the images there, rather than carrying a product in my backpack that I have to constantly stress about. And then like when I get to the top, I'm going to take images of this product, then that product to that direction and drone shots. Like if it becomes that, that's when I lose my interest for traveling completely.
Yeah, in that sense, passive income is definitely like makes way more sense, just to keep the passion alive.
Yeah, I rather always pay for my travels as much as I can myself. But if there is an opportunity to work with a cool hotel or a company along the way, I'll do it. But it will never like interfere with what I actually want to do. Like I always want to get done the stuff that I really want to do, and I really feel good about the travel as well. And that is like I travel for the whole year then from Indonesia. I traveled for like 6 months. And also at the time then I actually had to come back from Indonesia after 1.5 months to graduate from high school. So I was in Indonesia for 1.5 months. Then I got invited to another trip. Then I went to another country and blah, blah, blah. Like it just continued for the whole 2018 year, the rest of the year. And it was super exhausting at the end. But
and then something changed in your mind, or basically you lost a bit of the interest in traveling.
Yeah, and this was purely because I barely remembered some of the things I did during those travels. I was just too exhausted, and it also suffered, like my business suffered a lot because of that. I mean, my business was not really that developed at the time either way. All I was doing is like marketing the courses I had to my already existing audience. There was no like marketing outside of Instagram. It was only on like the currently existing audience.
But while traveling, you were also able to create another course in between, the Photoshop for photographers.
Yeah, so this I actually created back in Finland, and when I went to Indonesia, there was a chat with my dad beforehand about me needing some sort of a space to create like more content in. Because at the time I was creating in our sauna, or like just in a room that I shared with my big brother, and there was always too much noise. I could never really create courses without background noise, and I felt like so frustrated. So my dad one time just came to me and said that like, Julius, like let's build you like a mini office somewhere, and that was like such a good thing, the most valuable thing I've ever like gotten business wise.
Did your dad come up with the idea?
Yeah. So my dad came up with the idea.
Good that he did.
Yeah, so my dad built me this office. It ended up costing me like 550 euros with all the materials and so on. And that office was finished while I was in Indonesia, if I remember right. And I came home and then I saw the office for the first time. And at the time, I then already had my first laptop already bought as well. So in the beginning, in that office space, I had an IKEA table and then my laptop. And in between the travels, I always then focus for a few weeks or like a month at once. And I created the Photoshop for Photographers course, which I actually then launched while I was again traveling. But this, we're talking about an office that was like 2 square meters max.
For the people who watch on YouTube, we will definitely insert an image here because it was such a cute little box.
I called it the box as well. It was the box office. Not really an office. And during summer, it got like 35 degrees in there. And
How did your PC survive that?
I don't know. I have no idea. At the time, I didn't have a PC yet. And then I bought a PC along the way. Yeah, so this office space, then eventually it saved everything for me. Because this was the first space where I could purely just focus on my own stuff. And I was so invested into doing what I was doing that I isolated myself completely. I was constantly working. My parents remember this. My friends remember this. I wasn't doing anything else. And this then eventually turned into a really big issue because I overworked myself.
It's so insane to think about that you didn't do anything else and just working. And that also leads to the point, like you were really young at that age. How old?
I was 17.
17, yeah.
18.
18 years.
I turned 18 that year, but I wasn't 18 yet.
And you started so early with that whole Instagram and editing and business thing that it happened just so quickly, everything, that did you get to a point where you were completely overwhelmed and didn't know what to do anymore, or you lost your passion or whatever? Because everybody has that eventually if you work so much.
Yeah, that's how it felt for me eventually then. So I was at the point in my life where I had basically achieved everything that I ever could have imagined. This is a very cliche situation where someone dreams about something and then when that dream becomes reality, then you're suddenly not happy with it. And the reason why I wasn't happy with it was because I was exhausted. I was so done with constantly just focusing on work. And it wasn't like when I came home from the travels that I then chilled. When I came home from the travels, all the days when I was at home, it was pure focus mode on working and coming up with new course ideas, coming up with new product ideas. And I had like started doing more branding. I was speaking in front of my camera and doing stories, and I experimented with YouTube videos. And I was just doing everything that I could to grow the brand further. And that took a toll on me then eventually. And I would say that I lost my passion for a while for sure. And it was sad.
Yeah, I can imagine. What did you do then to fix it, or like how did you get out of that low?
So in this point of my story, there was a really big shift because I was contacted on Instagram by my ex-mentor Bob, and on Bob Van Boel on Instagram, and he sort of then helped me to get out of the mental rut. So Bob was the person who introduced me to things like meditation and like productivity and how to like the importance of sleep and exercise. And these are very normal things. And Bob, like mentor is not there for you to scale your business to like 10,000 a month. This is not how it's going to go. It's more so what can you fix in your life that supports the business? That's how I always see mentoring. And of course, there are business mentors who tell you like, how could you do this better and maybe like, how can you like grow certain things? And Bob definitely helped a little with those as well. Like whenever I had an idea, I ran it through him and he sort of gave them a little bit of insights on it.
Yeah.
So he was being like extremely helpful, but the most help I got from him was the mental side. And
which should never be left off. A lot of business owners don't pay much attention to it.
And this is most likely purely because people don't really know the existence of these things, or they might think that like meditation, like stupid stuff.
I also feel like, I mean, nowadays in our generation, it becomes more normal, stuff like meditation and morning routines and everything.
I feel like it's becoming a trend, but mainly because people are pushing it so much.
Yeah, but I think the older generations who have like actually local businesses or physical stores or whatever, they never thought about stuff like that.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
This is a funny business model nowadays because you are sort of in charge of everything all the time. It's your brand, your face, your products, your everything.
Yeah.
And then as cliche as it sounds, it is one of those moments where you, as I said, like when you reach your dreams, then you're not suddenly happy. And it's only because at the point I didn't really have the time for everything. I was constantly doing everything by myself. And then Bob introduced me to all of those things. And probably the most helpful thing was that he made me finally realize that as much as I want to do everything by myself, there's a point where that's not possible anymore. So then I did everything Bob told me. When Bob gave me I think, of course, with a filter. So I like ran everything through in my brain in a way that like, is this really good advice for my situation? Like it was a lot about accountability as well. Like if Bob told me that, hey, like you should do this and like get this thing in your life fixed, blah, blah, blah. If I didn't do it, I felt bad about myself because Bob checked up on me.
Yeah.
He asked me like, did you do this? And if I didn't do it, I'm not a person who lies and there wouldn't be any progress if I would always be like, yeah, I did it if I didn't do it. So he pressured me also in a good way to like get better mentally myself. And that helped me eventually to get out of the mental road. I hired my first employee to my business to help with all of like the back end stuff with my courses and messages, emails and so on. And that helped me to scale my business eventually.
And it was also a huge stress relief for you because at this point you couldn't handle all the work that needs to be done by yourself.
No, and I was so done that like even if I could have handled it, it would have taken me like 3x the time that it then took when I finally took the leap of like investing money into someone else's work for me as well. And then that allowed me to scale my business, and I was introduced to like Facebook marketing. I was introduced like to all these new possibilities to grow my company outside of my own audience. And that was a key factor for me. Because still up to this day, most creators only market to their own audience and they forget completely all the other possibilities there are.
But some products are sort of hard to market to other people than your audience if the marketing isn't like really on point.
Exactly. That's what it's hard to start.
That's the hard part.
Yeah. Having a great product is not as hard as having great marketing.
Yeah.
You can have a great product, but you're not going to sell that product if your marketing is not on point. You can sell it to people who've been following you for years, for sure, because those people know who you are, you've shared yourself, and also those people might not buy it, because if you haven't done branding at all, if people don't know who you are, if they don't know how you look like, it's really hard to sell to those people.
Yeah, that's why it's so important to show you in your stories.
Yeah, and talking
basically,
stories.
Yeah, just start building an image around you, especially if the product is sort of based around you or your knowledge.
Yeah, and nowadays, I think we can both agree that nowadays it's really important to be sort of on point with your branding as well, because everyone is sort of like, everyone is marketing branding all the time and like marketing themselves, and if you think only your work is what matters, you're gonna left behind the competition like this.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna happen really quick. You have to do branding constantly with your own face, preferably if your products are related to your own face, or not to your own face.
Maybe
but
if you don't have products yet, but you eventually want to start doing or creating products.
Yeah, this is all about building interest for your audience on what you are doing.
Yeah.
And every single person who ever sells product related to themselves or like their knowledge, like needs to do that eventually. And of course, there are products that don't require that, and we're gonna go to that then at the end of this episode, which then goes to my most successful product that doesn't necessarily require an audience beforehand if you know marketing really well.
But before that, we still need to talk about your comfort zone and a few months of doing nothing. But before that, we met and we traveled and got to know each other.
Yeah. So eventually we held a workshop in the beginning of 2019. I was completely done with traveling. And the first month of 2019, when I promised myself that I won't travel, I got invited on a trip. And what did I do? Well, I joined that trip. So it was really hard for me to then actually stop traveling, although I told myself in my brain multiple times that now it's the time to focus on my business and stop the traveling for a while. And then eventually I sort of did stop it. The next trip was then a trip with you.
No, you went to Bali.
Oh,
so you basically didn't stop it.
That was then like a couple-week trip to Bali.
You went to northern Finland and then like a little bit of a break, and then in spring you went to Bali, and then...
So I actually didn't stop traveling.
In June we went to Norway.
Yeah. So there was a time in between, a 3-month period, where I tried to build a printing company. I stopped marketing all of my other stuff and I tried to focus only on my printing company, and that was a complete flop. I invested... If I remember right, I invested 12,000 at the time, which was a lot of money for myself at the time. And I invested all of that into a printing company, all the supplies and like high quality printers and papers and everything, and complete flop. That's what happened.
Logistic wise, it just doesn't make sense to do it all by yourself, and especially ship it from Finland.
Exactly. It was like the shipping was the problem.
Yeah.
I probably could have solved the prints if I would have like thought about marketing a bit more, but this is where my creative side kicked in.
Yeah.
I wanted to make a product that I can be so proud of, and like prints are like a really close thing to a creator. It's like you finally see your own work on paper and you want to make it good if you're going to sell it. So I like included like silk like gloves and everything inside there, and I did a lot of like marketing, I mean branding
silk
on
gloves.
Yeah, I had like
into every package
and those were like €2 each.
No.
And I had like everything wrapped in like black silk paper, and then I had
so guys, buy Julius prints, high quality.
Yeah, so I just forgot like the marketing completely. So again, good product, zero marketing knowledge on how to sell prints. So that's why it flopped. And then because I constantly wanted to do more and more and more, the printing company sort of faded, and then I started focusing on new projects. But then we met after my workshop in March, I think. Yeah, it was in March, and we did then a trip to Norway, a 10,000-kilometer road trip. We're gonna explain more about that then in another story or in another episode. And then the rest of 2019, what did I do? Nothing.
not really much.
No. I moved away from home. That was big, but moving away from home was incredible, but also brought me to like a complete comfort zone situation where I wasn't doing anything.
So like you can actually imagine that Julius barely did anything for the rest of the year. Yeah. I hope that's not mean or anything, but that's just how it is. And of course, if you stop doing business for such a long time, especially if you haven't figured everything out, or like nothing is running completely automated yet, of course your business will suffer, and that's exactly what happened. Yeah,
so then I noticed, like in 2019, I did some projects. I created a webinar that was very successful. And the reason why I did nothing was because I started being so comfortable with the money I was earning. I was being so comfortable in my situation, in my nice apartment. I was finally at the point where I felt like I can spend more time with friends. I had met you. Like there were other things in my life that I prioritized at the time. So I just thought that now that I'm making money passively, I can just stop working for a while and the money will keep going and coming. But this, of course, nothing really runs automatically for like 6+ months if you do nothing, especially if it's a personal brand.
Yeah.
And I did a mistake at the time, very beginner mistake. It's like you reach more like success to the point where you're sort of happy with it. And even though there's always like a slight voice in your brain that you should do something, I was too comfortable and I did nothing.
And what then happened to your business?
Well, I started noticing that the business went completely down. And I had really good months, and then I suddenly started having really bad months. It wasn't necessarily that the business died. It was just like a roller coaster. 1 month really good, 1 month really bad, 1 month really good, 1 month really bad. And I wasn't really that evolved with Facebook marketing yet. I had a Facebook marketing team that I still use up to this day. They're really talented. But at the time, like I was just trying to do courses. I wasn't really thinking ahead or trying to see what new could I create. I was just trusting Photoshop for photographers. That one course I created in 2018, I marketed it for like 1+ year.
Well, it was a really good course.
And it really, and I'm going to update that course this year, and which is going to be like the biggest project I've ever done. But this course is going to be upgraded like to a whole new level this year. And I'm sure this will be like a next big project as well. Definitely not as big as some of the things I have planned, but it's like a thing in my journey that I want to get done now this year.
Yeah.
And then I can move forward to like other projects that I have coming. But yeah, basically I focus on the same product. It worked really well for like multiple years, and it still sells like almost daily. Like I still get sales of that course almost daily, and the feedback has been amazing on that course. But it's just one of those things that if you focus on one thing for too long at the time, you are going to suffer at some point business-wise. Like there should always be something new that you're doing.
And then eventually you reached the point where you thought, now you need to change something. Now you need to come up with new ideas or take new business opportunities. And you started, this is probably a few months into the future, like a bit too much into the future, but you started to create your most successful product.
Yeah, so then the beginning of 2020 was quite slow. We were like hanging out. Like
we went on a trip to Lapland and everything.
Yeah, so we did a bit of traveling again, and I was still like quite comfortable, but I was at the same time sort of uncomfortable, if that makes any sense. Like I was comfortable in a sense that I had met you. I wasn't necessarily suffering financially at any point. And it took me a while to then get started in 2020 again. But it took around 3 months to then start like working on new projects. I worked on some smaller projects behind the scenes that were semi-successful. And then I started thinking and looking at the market that like, what is something that I can create that doesn't necessarily require like a really, really big marketing plan to it. Something that is sort of flashy and sells really well to people who have absolutely no idea who I am. And then I created Photoshop brushes that I'm still selling up to this day very successfully. And the Photoshop brushes, I wasn't the first one who created them. Definitely not. There's like tens of thousands of people who sell brushes.
Yeah, but you added a unique touch to it.
Well, I created the brushes out of my images that I had taken within 4 years of photography. So like in order for me to create this product, there was 4 years of photography behind, like shooting Northern Lights in Norway and just taking multiple different images in like different countries. So then I was able to use these images to create these brushes. And I created about 60 of them, and I launched that product, and there was such a big hype to the product beforehand. I created a few stories beforehand just to see if people are interested, and my DMs exploded like crazy. Now, I probably never gotten that many messages on like promotion. Like usually people are annoyed at promotion, but this was the thing that people were like, I want this, I need this, like this is the coolest thing.
Because you could immediately see the effect basically of what they do.
And yeah, like they are cool.
They are.
And I use them, and you use them. My brother uses them. I know like dozens of creators who use them every single day in their work, and they are extremely useful. But for me, this product, as sad as it sort of hurts to admit, but this was a product for me that I created purely to see how good of a product is business wise. And I love the product, but I sort of knew beforehand that this is a product that could work really well, and it did work really well. And we're gonna have separate episodes then about business like in general, and like how I was able to build a business, and like what basically happened behind the scenes of marketing and so on. We can talk about that more.
Yeah.
But yeah, this product completely blew up, and I've been able to successfully sell it ever since. And and I built like new selling platforms. I constantly upgraded what I previously had. So if you're at a point where you don't have anything, create something, and then along the way keep upgrading it, and that's gonna sort of keep going. Then if you really pay attention to how you're gonna market it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree. There was a really, really good product that just based on the ads, you immediately feel like, wow, this is something unique. I need it, because the effects can just be applied within seconds. So the marketing part was way more important in this case than...
And the marketing is more simplified because the ad basically shows that quick results in seconds. Anyone can use them without any prior knowledge. And this is a hype product. This is a product where people look at it and they probably don't even know what Photoshop is, and they still are like interested to get it.
Definitely.
Like I've gotten people who like, hey, can I use this in this mobile app? Can I use this here and in this program and that program? It's like, no, it's only Photoshop. And like people are interested in no matter what they are doing. Like, can this be applied to my video? So like random questions that have nothing to do with the product, but people get interested in, and then they like immediately think like, is this something that I can use?
Yeah, we should definitely create a separate episode about like breaking down how you created the product, or like more even about the marketing.
Like that. Yeah.
Marketing part,
100%.
how you scaled it and everything.
Yeah. But that's basically, I would say, like my story, very sort of sped up, but also like that's sort of how it went. There's multiple things that we of course don't have time to go in detail to, because it will be like a 4-hour episode.
Probably even more if we would talk about every single detail.
Yeah.
But that's what the podcast is here for. We all talk about various type of topics still in here every now and then.
Like a lot of the things that we talked about, we're gonna have like episodes then where we definitely refer to these things and like what things affected what and so on. But this was more so just the storyline of how Julius went from this to this.
Yeah. And to wrap it up, I have one last question that I've written down, and it's, what is the one thing that you've learned along the way that you want others to know? What maybe even based on the episode, on your story? So
I would say, to sort of summarize everything, is like grab every single opportunity along the way. Like start with really good intentions. If your intentions to start is to make like a lot of money, and I know this is a cliche, but this is the most true thing that I've learned during my progress, is that if you have the wrong intentions, you're going to be unhappy at the end. And the only thing that should matter is that you can still be happy with what you are passionate about. And if you lose that passion along the way, this is the saddest thing that can happen.
It's an amazing thing to make money with your passion, but you should never forget your passion and actually like stay true to yourself.
Yeah, and remember, why did you start doing something?
Yeah.
And so grab every opportunity along the way, and please do not do things for the wrong reasons. And remember that the more you work, the more you do, the luckier you will become. But when you are working a lot, keep in mind that there are things that you can change in your life to do things in a more successful way. And I would also say that do not try to do everything by yourself. Find people who can help you.
Eventually, you can't start like that.
No.
That's the thing.
Every single person is going to have the hustle phase at some point where you just have to go for it and work your butt off for like hours and hours and hours. And this is going to feel like labor work at some point. As much as you love doing something, if you're working 16-hour days, it's going to take a toll on your physical health at some point. But there's going to be a point where most people are going to do this either way. Whether it's that your deadlines are like coming to end in a few days and you absolutely have to work, or then in general you just have personal projects that take a lot of time. But yeah, grab every opportunity along the way, stay true to yourself, and try to like basically maintain your passion as much as you can along the way. And know your why. This is very important, just to basically always remind yourself why you're actually doing it. That's pretty much it. If you have any questions about it, we have a comment section on YouTube. You can comment down below if some of the things we talked about brought some questions up in your head. Write them down below, and give us some recommendations on the length of the episodes as well. Do you want us to go even more in depth into these topics? Do you care if they're 2 hours, or do you want us to keep it more like 40 minutes or something like that? Of course, we decide what we're going to do, but at the same time, it's interesting to know what the audience thinks. I personally think like max an hour is a good size. Yeah. Julius thinks a bit differently, but I'm more so like if it's a free conversation and there's more to talk about, I like to just finish and not feel pressure to like go through things in a bit quicker way. But as you said multiple times already, we're going to have like episodes on different topics, and we can talk about them more in detail than in future episodes. But yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel if you like listening to us. We would really appreciate if you could go and click on the like button on this video. That helps us a lot to get this podcast out there, because we really want to do this for a long time, and I want to grow the audience to motivate as many people as we can.
That would be the best case. Yeah, we hope you enjoyed the episode, and as Julie said, if you have any questions, you can just leave a comment or just message us on Instagram. We are always happy to help. And yeah, thanks a lot for listening. See you next time then.
This is the Beneath the Surface podcast. Bye-bye.